Welcome to this session of Finding New Life in Jesus While Quarantined. This is Easter week, and each day we'll be digging into the scriptures, looking at the events leading up to the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. And I hope that as you dig into the scriptures, as you study the life of Jesus and these events of his last week, you'll be inspired, you'll be uplifted, you'll be encouraged, and you'll get to know Jesus better, draw closer to him. Each of the gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, record events of that last week from a different perspective. And so it's important that we look at each writer, what he contributes to our understanding of that last week. As we stitch them together, we create a beautiful mosaic, a beautiful quilt of those events, and we get the true picture of Jesus' life during that last week. In the Gospels, we know what the very first miracle of Jesus was. Of course, turning water into wine at the wedding of Cana. But do you know what the very last miracle of Jesus was? Well, today you'll find out. Today we look at the arrest of Jesus. He was arrested late one night, probably on a Thursday night, probably near the Mount of Olives. And we read that some soldiers, some officials from the chief priests, from the Pharisees, came to arrest Jesus, and that they brought torches and swords. And we read that in that encounter, that Peter also had a sword. And every one of the Gospels record a particular event that happened. And that was that Peter drew his sword, and being the great swordsman that he was, he struck someone on the other side, cutting off his ear. We know which ear, his right ear. Now, think about that in sword play. As you're facing someone, their right ear, if you're right-handed, is the opposite side of your right hand. And so Peter is flailing away with his sword and just happened to cut off the right ear of someone. Now, we also know who that is, that it was a servant of the chief priest. And from John's writing of the account, we know his name, Malchus. Now think about that. There's a lot of people involved in this event and in the life of Jesus whose names we do not know, important people. But we know this man's name, Malchus. Now, after Peter had cut off his ear, Luke tells us that Jesus healed it. Jesus put the ear back in place and healed him. The last recorded miracle of Jesus was to fix Peter's wildly flailing sword play, cutting off the ear of the chief of the high priest, Malchus's ear. Jesus fixed it, told Peter to put away his sword, and he healed the ear of Malchus, putting it back into place. Now, that's very interesting because this is the servant of the high priest. And what do you think the high priest thought when they got back and asked, how did it go? Well, something happened. What happened? One of the disciples cut off my ear. Well, you have 2 ears now. I know. He healed me. He put the ear back in place, and it's perfect now. Here is a witness to the power of Jesus. Every day, Malchus sees and feels this experience of having 2 ears because of Jesus. What must he have thought? Why do you think we know his name? Could it be that perhaps after the death and resurrection of Jesus, when little groups were meeting, little groups of Christians in homes across Jerusalem, that Malchus showed up one night. And he introduced himself. My name is Malchus. But aren't you the servant of the high priest? Yes, I am. Then why are you doing here? I had to find more about him, because that night I was the one whose ear was cut off, and he healed it. He put it back. And ever since then, I had to know more about this man. And so tonight I'm here to hear about him. And I cannot help but believe that he became a follower of Jesus. You know, there is a witness of God's power all around us, in your life and in the lives of other people. There is that ear. There is that way that God has touched you, healed you, restored you, provided for you. Don't miss the witness of Jesus that's right in your very face, that we see every single day. I don't believe a day passes that God doesn't give us a witness of who he is and what he has done and the things he does for us. So be that witness. Be that person who is a testimony to God's power and provision. And don't be ashamed to tell others that God is real, that Jesus heals and restores, that he provides, that faith is more important than fear. And you live as a Christian, a follower of Jesus, one that's been healed, restored, one that has new life, because Jesus gives us new life. Well, join me again tomorrow for another session of finding new life in Jesus while quarantined.